Hello, welcome back. It is week 180 here on Out on That Line podcast. I'm Jeff with my co-host Alex. As always, Alex, how we doing this week?
Jeff, they say that hard times make hard men. And if that's the case, then you might as well call me the third little pig because I'm all bricked up and ready to blow, baby. I can't wait to do this episode today. How you doing?
No way. I don't even know what to say to that. I think that's a good warm up, certainly for the album that we're going to be talking about today. That was not expected whatsoever. That was fantastic.
I really like the album.
Yeah, I did too. Spoiler alert, I did too, but Jesus Christ. That was fantastic. I think you have to clip that. If only for my personal collection. Like, that was phenomenal. Well, what do you say we get to the main event here, Alex, and we talk a little bit, well, maybe a lot of bit, because I really like this album a lot. The Viagra Boys' newest album, Viagr Aboys. They just like split it up weirdly, and I don't know if you're supposed to pronounce it weirdly, but they're just weird dudes, clearly. You listen to this album, and if you try to tell me they're not weird dudes, then you're probably also a weird dude. But really, we did the previous one, Cave, why can't I think of it? Cave something?
Cave World. Shit. Yeah, Cave World.
So like great. I remember liking it a lot. And so I went back and listened to a little bit of that. And this almost reminded me of like a King Gizzard sort of thing. Just the variance of the different types of music they had going on here. It felt like I heard so many influences, but they were kind of doing all of them better than the band I felt like the influence was. But I think the easiest way to start things off here is just exactly how they start off the album. So I'm just going to read some lyrics here from the song Man Made of Meat. So I'm just going to read the first verse here. And I was like, they just came in swinging on this album. So overweight freaks ride around on wheelchairs motorized by electric motors made by goblins in a factory overseas. They're there to buy drywall and other products that they can eat back at home on the sofa. They watch TV about a man named Chandler Bing who died in a freak hot tubbing accident and spent his time drinking hot dog flavored water on a popular TV show called Tub Girls. Like, for those of you not chronically online, the Tub Girls line is referencing something very specific that I'm not going to really talk about at all on this.
Do not Google it. Google it.
The fact that he's talking about people watching Friends, calling it Chandler Bing, and then referencing the real life Matthew Perry drowning in his hot tub, like as the first line, it was as shocking as like sometimes when I'd heard like Eminem say some things. Like when they were like, M, for Pete's sake, put down Christopher Reeve's legs. And I'm like, just when you hear something like that, it rattles you. You're just shocked. And I feel like they just consistently do that throughout this album.
First of all, quick sidebar here. Hot dog flavored water. Is the consensus that that's piss? Is that the slang? Like the chocolate starfish is obviously a butthole.
Yeah. Well, I think hot dog flavored water is just like you don't want to drink like the hot dog water.
Well, no, you wouldn't. I guess I don't know. I'm just thinking like
it could be piss though. I've never thought of I've always thought of it as literally hot dog water.
Well, because I was thinking of it this is the brilliance of the podcast. We come at these two highly intellectual topics. Is it piss or is it hot dog water refuse? The mind wonders with the new metal stylings of Limp Bizkit. But I was trying, when I heard that line, I was trying to make like the Limp Bizkit connection, and I'm like, okay, there's a Matthew Perry Limp Bizkit connection, or there's a Chandler Bing has a piss fetish connection that I wasn't aware of watching Friends. I don't know. And now we're all the way into Tub Girl.
Yeah.
Because Tub Girls was an Andy Warhol experimental film, and Tub Girl, do not Google it.
Well, it's too late. Somebody already did.
Oh, I highly suggest you put
sorry about it.
In that bottle.
Sorry about it. But it was just, to me, the first song, like, it's very, I don't even know how to like put this. This was like if the National like had a personality. was this album to
Well,
me.
that's impossible. That's scientifically impossible.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like you can't. It's hard to imagine what it is, but it's like I don't know what to really peg this as, but it's the same thing with like Idols. Is like I guess generally a punk band.
Yeah. Yeah, punk, post-punk. I don't think they're necessarily taking like wild genre stabs and like moving the genre forward or
Yeah, but
anything
that's
like
it's
that.
the same. Reminds me of like Shame or like Fontaine's DC. Like it very much where it's like each you can't really peg them as a like in generally a certain genre. There's just songs they'll do in certain genres.
Squid, Black Midi.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're also on this album. You get into the Sprechsing or Sprechen
Mm-hmm.
thing that we talked about last week. And I invoked Tom Waits last week when we did Black Country New Road, and I dare say that even here, more so
Ooh,
Sebastian
what's the
Murphy,
Medicine for Horses
Medicine for
too?
Horses.
Yeah, like there are some very funny moments like the Chandler Bing stuff and like like throughout the whole album, but there's also some like very poignant, like very heavy moments where you're not just you're there's a lot of black comedy and then there's a lot of just like darkness. You know what I mean? What's the yeah, hey baby, can I borrow your car? I want to drive into a wall and make us two-dimensional. And by the way, I need your credit card. I need to pay a guy to get my pineal gland recalcified. And like talking about the plains of North America, were you able to figure out like what he was talking about with like what was the plains of North America? Like what did that mean?
I just assumed that's exactly what it was the
Yeah.
Plains of North America because they
Okay.
toured with Queens of the Stone Age. And I think that's
Oh.
where a lot of this material that's where Man Made of Meat came from is Sebastian Murphy, the lead singer, was like, we just went to hella Walmarts on this tour. And you would
Hmm.
just look at Walmart and be like, oh my God, it's just fat people on scooters getting,
Hmm.
Doritos flavored ice cream. And, it was just kind of like this. This is part of what's so interesting about the album is it is very judgmental, but in a way that doesn't turn you off. Like, that
Hmm.
whole observation is not flattering of the flyover states to be like, they're just a bunch of fat bastards who run around Walmart on their electric scooters looking
Hmm.
for DVD chub packs of Adam Sandler movies and, bulk whoppers, you know? And it's like it's a scathing critique, but it's also more so about the way of life than it is like the individual. It's never being like these people are shitty and fucking
Hmm.
stupid and terrible and should feel bad about themselves. It's just like, man, we've really reduced life in America to this,
Hmm.
haven't we? That's kind of sad.
You know what I get the vibes of is well now there's another one I just thought of, but the first one was Welcome Interstate Managers. Like
Good
the
pull.
idea of like little vignettes of because there's a lot of like there's a song about his dog's point of view going to the vet, so it's like there's so and then there's what is the what's it called, not Medicine for Horses, what's the next one, Waterboy is like not about anybody specific other than just like somebody that's just living a very shitty lifestyle, that they may not be a piece of shit but they're like only drink Mountain Dew and they do a bunch of drugs and they like text, they kind of text girls and they're pushy with them, and it's just like, they're just painting these pictures like you were saying. The other one I kind of that comes to mind that is like the Ballad of Dude and Juanita. It's like there's much different ways to tell these kind of stories, but I feel like the albums that do this sort of thing successfully are always so interesting. Because I feel like it's a strength as a songwriter because you get some people that can write from one perspective and it's like that's all they can write from. And so while they do that very well, it can get a little bit repetitive because you're always hearing I feel this way, and it's while it's not bad, gets repetitive. When you get an artist that can look through other perspectives and like tell a story through somebody else's eyes, even if it's like a made up character, you think of the people that were great at that as like Springsteen. Tom Waits did that
Hmm.
very, very well. Bob Dylan did that very, very well. So it's like we're not going to say this is Dylan's Masters of War, but lyrically, I think when you look past the like tongue in cheek and like kind of like trying to be funny intentionally, like there is a lot here that's a little deeper than just like quick little jokes about Matthew Perry drowning in a hot tub, you know?
Yeah, and the stuff like Matthew Perry drowning in a hot tub and all that are those like you reference Eminem, I think of like Bloodhound Gang, Luciano
Hmm.
Pavarotti on a treadmill, not going where nowhere, slim chance we will.
Hmm.
Less hip than Bo Jackson, bored like wood, dick around like Frankie Goes to Hollywood, real life. I could
God,
do the whole
if they had
song.
ever taken themselves seriously, they could have been like a legitimately great band, I think.
They were a great band, but they kept making stuff like Hooray for Boobies. And I guess they must just have been like ahead of their time in terms of splitting the different. They had to split the difference between Frank Zappa and Viagra Boys, and then they could have been like proto Viagra Boys. They just
Hmm.
weren't necessarily interested in like social commentary for social commentary's sake. It was, like vignettes of these different people, the Ballad of Chasey Lane and stuff like that. Um, and then you look at it, and so it's like, why is that like not a serious song that you would like recommend someone listen to versus why would you recommend a Viagra Boys song and call it clever? A lot of it's in the way that it's said, but also like I think the fact that they mean it. I think the
Hmm.
difference is something like Zappa or Bloodhound Gang will do it for shits and giggles, and there's shits and giggles for Viagra Boys, but underneath it is also like, I do have a point to make. And rather than be like bogged down in it and sad and sullen about it, I'm going to get creative. I'm not going to get pushy or preachy. I'm going to get uh, vivid and evocative with
Hmm.
these images of the fat people on the scooters, the goblins that make the bikes. You just like see everything so very clearly all throughout this with the storytelling that you do. And the people you invoked are, it's totally right. I think specifically Tom Waits, how
Hmm.
great he was at his storytelling and the way that it flowed. You get that all over this one too.
Hmm. Yeah, and I loved it. And it's so when I was listening to the first time through and got to, man, I would never remember the names of these songs. Uno 2. The song about the dog, like the point of view of the dog going to the veterinarian. And what I saw in this one is like the first time you listen through, you're like, okay, you heard him say veterinarian, and then it's like by the end you're able to figure out he's talking about a dog if you don't have the lyrics in front of you, right? But I went back and like on my second listen when I had the lyrics and stuff up in front of me and was assured myself that he was talking about the dog. What I loved is I think this is like a because the dog gets into a conspiracy theory, like in the song. This is definitely like a commentary. There's a lot of like political commentary in this too, because I think there's a side of when he talks about how life is and those the Great Plains of America. I think there's also an acknowledgement of like we know what's caused life to be this way in the middle of America. And so that like same kind of like conspiracy theory sort of environment, like QAnon type of stuff, the dog is doing it in the second verse where he's like, is Bogdan my enemy? Does he want what's best for me? What's he doing with my teeth? Is he taking them to Australia? Because he's convinced himself that there's a operation that sells rotten teeth of exotic dog breeds like internationally. Like there's a black market for it. When it's really he's just got rotten teeth and they have to get pulled. But he's got this conspiracy theory that it's like, no, that can't be what it is. Like that's way too simple. It's got to be that they want my teeth and they're going to sell them. But it's just that idea of like being able to talk yourself into these conspiracy theories. And also it's funny that a dog would even be thinking of these conspiracy theories. I think that's a part of it. So that's like the silly part of it. But then there's also the kind of like, wait, but there's people that actually do this kind of stuff that believe these sort of things, like Pizzagate.
Pizzagate for dogs, baby.
Yeah.
Oh, see, if this was the Skimbo Lounge, I would call the episode Pizzagate for dogs. But it's also what's fun about that song is we all, or at least I do, assign like the inner monologue to my dog. Like I'll look at him and I'll be like, oh, this is what he's thinking. And you just like always kind of trick yourself into thinking that they have a human consciousness
Hmm.
and thought process. So seeing that trope brought to life through a song like this, and it's like, it's fun. I found a crouton under a futon. My mama said I couldn't eat it because all my teeth are gone. It's just like it's cute, it's weird, it's funny, and it's just like very indicative of the wild swings that they take all over this thing.
Hmm.
Um and it's a nice break from like things that they're trying to skewer. Like there's certainly an element of like the conspiracy theory and like the panic, but it's less specific than something like Pyramid of Health, which great nod to Marcy Playground Sex and Candy in that one.
Mm-hmm.
Hanging around.
Yeah. And
And
I wasn't sure that that was intentional, and then like you hear it again, you're like, absolutely, because there's no
100%.
because that song was plenty popular enough that there's no shot that he sang it that way, and it wasn't because he heard it that from that song.
And it's repeated every time. Like, how
Yeah.
could you not? How
Yeah.
could you not? It's right there, hanging around.
Yeah. And I think I don't know if it was like a tribute thing, but I think that's part of what I also heard a lot of is like some influences by other bands. Like there was definitely, I don't think they were like paying tribute to the National, but a song like Medicine for Horses, it very much like if the National could have just sounded like that a little more instead, I might actually like them. And it just seems like whatever genre they decided to kind of dip their toe in, and a lot of songs they did multiple. So they go in their little kind of like hardcore punk little riffs, but a lot of that was played with a piano that had distortion on it. You could tell it wasn't like a guitar riff that they were doing. So I like that they chose different instrumentation. They like same thing with like Jordy Greek, and listening to that album. I think that's what's it called? Sprechen, what's the
I Sprexang, I think is what
Sprexang, yeah.
it's called.
So like that, where it just can all of a sudden snap to something else in a heartbeat. Like I like that too. It's unpredictable, like what you're gonna get song to song, because you have a song like Waterboy, which is like upbeat and it's fun to listen to, but like the storyline of it is like pretty sad. It's a guy that's basically just like wasting his life away, not taking care of himself, living a very unhealthy lifestyle. And then you get to a song like Store Policy, where he's talking about smoking crypto is bad for your teeth. I'm touching myself by the health food shelf, and it's like they get back to the kind of like the silliness of it all. I think their ability to make each, whether they're being like the silly side of things or playing, being more serious musicians and writing like serious songs, whatever version of that they're doing on this album and however much they swing back and forth, it always just seems to work.
I think because it's backed by also something we really haven't hit on yet is like super excellent musicianship.
Mm-hmm.
Guitars drop tuned all the way down through the bottom of the basement floor. Excellent, just like excellent, thick, clunky bass. It's pretty like standard post-punk stuff, but again, like perfectly executed, very well done. Exactly what you need for something like this, because you're hanging your concepts off of this like musical structure. The concept, the things you're singing about, the story, the way you're singing it, the lyrics that you use, that's the chaos. And then there's like a little bit of structure in the way that it's all being played. So something like Black Country New Road, which, as I said on that episode, kind of starts at A and diverges like all the way in and around itself until it gets to Z, as opposed to like A B A B A A C structure or whatever, Clive Davis pop. And this music is surprisingly structured, surprisingly disciplined. I don't want to say tame, because it's definitely exciting and it's high energy and it's everything you would think post punk was going to be. But it keeps it pretty standard in order to like really make the concept stick out. And sometimes I think it's easy to assign that to a band, to be like, well, they were more interested in the concept than they were the music. And it's like, but here I really do truly believe that. They've talked at length about like what Cave World was and what this was supposed to be, and art and commercialization, kind of peanut butter and chocolate are finally together. And I just think like musically they have the chops to back it up all day long, but what makes it special is just these weird, quirky ways that they choose to talk about this weird shit that's happening to all of us.
Mm-hmm. And I think this is definitely an album that if you are into, if you like the Jordy Greep album, I think if you liked I did see some similarities to like the Black Country New Road. It's just, didn't really like the Black Country New Road, but it's like I can hear what you're saying with that. So if that's a band that if you appreciated that album or that work, then I think there's a lot of entry points to this Viagra Boys too. I think there's, because they touch on so many genres, they do them all so well that it's like you might not like all their songs, but they probably got a few that anybody can like. And I think that's it's a tough thing to do, because I think it's hard to be as appealing as they are to me, and like what I feel like should have a pretty mass appeal, and also be so strong in like what you're writing about. And there's nothing generic about it, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at. It's still a very much like fully fleshed out project that they've put together, but it's like you said, that art meets the commercialization. It just seems like they're kind of hitting some sort of mainstream right now.
And it's just like I'm looking at the track listing and the album art and all of this, and like thinking about it item by item, who these characters are and what these songs are. Man Made of Meat, the Bog Body. People are weirdly obsessed with bog bodies,
Mm-hmm.
and like Girlfriend of the Pod is always like, the concept of a bog body is so terrifying. It's so old and so perfectly preserved, and it's just floating in the water next to, like, people are like virally obsessed with bog bodies. So I thought it was funny to do a song from that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Uno 2 from the dog going to the vet, hilarious. Pyramid of Health, a cheeky takedown, just a cheeky takedown of like for-profit health food scams
Mm-hmm.
and kind of hope, like selling people false hope. Like, it's very, very bitter and sarcastic. Um, Verse 2, come on down, bring your sacrificial goat. And don't forget to wear your feathers and your silly little necklace and get real high with the shrimp up in the sky, and you'll no
Mm-hmm.
longer fear your death. That kind of tells you all you need to know about how they feel about crystal
Mm-hmm.
healing, ayahuasca darkness retreats, and
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. These things that people will swear by, but I think you're also kind of selling hope to the average man and or the average person,
Mm-hmm.
that like that's the cure for what ails you. You go on an ayahuasca darkness retreat in your basement and tell me how it goes. Like, it'll fix you. You'll be the quarterback for the New York Jets. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just like it's a dangerous thing. It can ruin people's health, it can ruin their lives, and it can be incredibly disappointing and crass. It's a crass money-making
Mm-hmm.
thing. And they fit it all into this one song that's just so perfectly, like, from the onset, hanging out with a camera down my throat. They say my stomach's merely fried from eating cigarettes for breakfast, but if I follow 7 easy steps, I might avoid my death.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
just see the image of like the guy getting the camera just like in the office. It's done in such a wonderfully evocative way all
Yeah.
throughout this song and this album.
Yeah. I love that song because it just, again, it's basically like a protest song against that kind of industry, which is, I'm always down for those. But the way they wrote them, like, stood on a mountain and I turned to dust, little green worm said it wasn't enough. It's just like they're telling you exactly what you're looking at without being obvious about it. I think that's something we point out about a lot of artists, whether it's this kind of genre, like the post-punk kind of genre or not, or if it's country or whatever. If it's like, you have to like tell me, don't just show me. Don't say like, guy in a red shirt was sitting on his porch and he was really sad because his wife left. Like, tell this, like, paint that picture a different way. Like, don't make it so obvious. And I think talking about, like, when he says drink this sludge and you'll see what I mean, pyramid of health is everything. It's like, you don't have to know exactly what sludge it is to know that could be like an Herbalife shake. It could be like the smoothie bar in the gym. It's like there's a lot of things that you get to pull from this because they haven't like narrowed that window so much that you know exactly what it is they're talking about. I think their ability to leave a little bit of imagination so that you can put yourself in there too. That's always really important to people. Maybe they'll like it the first time, but it's hard to connect with songs that you can't like find your way into. And no matter what the like subject matter is on this album, like it just seems like every song has that ability for you to get into it.
And I also think one of the really kind of wonderful, beautiful things that this album does is start to finish, it takes you on this ride where it's like, okay, there's going to be this social critique. There's going to be these kind of slices of life from different perspectives. And we're just going to be talking a lot about the human condition in very specific ways, but in ways that like resonate with everybody. And it's going to be a little heavy and it's going to be a little hectic and it's going to be a little uncomfortable. To then we get to the very end of the album and it's River King. And there is something so like it sounds like a sad song. It
Yeah.
sounds so haunting. And it is haunting in the sense like it's haunting in the way that it sounds and the way that the song sticks with you because it's so incongruous with what came before it on the album to get all of this like fast and furious social critique to then end up with just like appreciating the simple things.
Hmm.
Everything feels profound when it's a new love or an enduring crush or just a simple moment with someone you love sitting in your room playing video games all day. I wonder if you knew I've been thinking about you ever since we met. When you chased me around and stepped on me with your big boots and everything felt easy. Everything feels easy now. And it goes on. But that's like such a wonderful sentiment at
Hmm.
the end of this whole like anti-commercialism, anti-establishment, anti-fraud, anti-sadness kind of like very fun diatribe that's been happening this entire time. You end it on a note that is just like so haunting and yet so uplifting and short and sweet and concise and kind of perfect. I know it's kind of controversial the way that it ended. A lot of people are like, what the fuck? It's kind of like a fizzle out ending, and I wholly disagree. I think
Yeah.
it was a great way to bring it back around.
Yeah, I think that was fantastic. And it reminded me of something very, very specific. And you may not at all know what I'm talking about here, but band Power Man 5000 did the album Tonight the Stars Revolt. And the whole album was basically just like crazy space metal. Like that's what the whole thing, I loved it. It was just like sci fi movies in metal form. It was great. But the very end, like the hidden track was this like very it almost sounded like a lullaby almost, but it was like very much like River King, where it had this kind of graveliness to it, like a old like 50s AM radio kind of thing. But it was like a very, very different feel from the rest of the album, but it was a perfect way to end the album. Like it was it and if you don't want to listen to the rest of that Power Man 5000 album, I think you should. But if you just listen to that last part, you'll kind of I think you'll hear what I mean. But it just was I think if people didn't appreciate that, I think then they kind of missed the point of the whole album if they didn't appreciate River King.
Yeah, I think it just brings you back to baseline, and much in the way that like the Pyramid of Health is like, oh, we promise you follow 7 easy steps that you can get back to health and wellness and avoid an untimely death or, you know, this like
Mhm.
unseemly state of being. It's everything they sing about is so complicated and so emotional, and there are a lot of ways you can feel about some of these things 'cause, you know, as many people swear by crystal healing will say that it's bullshit. As many people that love shopping at Walmart, they love the bargains, will judge you for doing it one way or another. You're either like white trash or you're a corporate pig. And like a lot of the songs on this album can be described as you can't win. And it's a lot of different like slices of life where it's easy to feel pulled down. So to end with River King, where it's something is universal, like we've all loved someone. It could be a parent, a romantic interest, a friend, a pet, whatever. But we've all kind of experienced that love. So to end it on that note, to take it back to basics like that is just like it sounds like trite to say, but it's a nice thing that Viagra Boys could do. It
Mhm.
was nice that they did that because it could have just been like panic and send you away and be like, the world's pretty fucked. But instead, they choose to be like, the world's pretty fucked. But at least everybody's got a little something or a little
Mhm.
someone that makes it all worth it at the end of the day. And this is what we're fighting for, and this is what keeps us alive.
Yeah.
And I just thought, like, after all this fucking tongue-in-cheek clownery that's on this great album, that was a really nice way to end it.
It was very sincere. Like
Yes.
that's what I appreciated. Um, I do need to shout out a couple of things before we wrap this out here. The so on genius.com is usually where I go when I need my lyrics because they just seem to always have it and other places just don't. What I love the descriptions that they do sometimes because sometimes they won't even have one, but on the song store policy, the description, and I'll remind people in store policy, it says, I'm touching myself by the health food shelf. It also says, I stole a shrimp from the local zoo. Got a tank at home. What about you? I'm selling drugs to the kids at school. I'm up all night gooning to a picture of you. On the description, it just says, I thank Viagra Boys for teaching me how to behave in a store, is what they say on that. It's fantastic. And then the song that I can't believe we haven't talked a little more about. And if you want to talk a little bit more about this one, I'm fine taking a little more time here. But the song You Need Me was absolutely phenomenal, fantastic. I think to me is like the best representation like of this album. That starts out, I can make your girl stop what she's doing and turn around and watch me do my little dance. I can drink about 15 beers or maybe 25. It depends on the can. I can drop a lot of interesting facts about Europe in the 1950s. And then it goes into like, doesn't mean anything if you're not here with me. And then the next verse, I can make your man stop what he's doing and walk straight up to me and fucking knock me out. Like, just what a hysterical thing to say. So it starts out, he's like, oh, I'm going to seduce your girl. And then the second verse is like, oh, no, I'm going to be creepy to your girl and your man's going to knock me out.
Well, and just, like, that's perfect, and then also, like, the lack of self-awareness of the character, like, I think is perfectly summed up in the bridge. Did you know that the last Japanese soldiers surrendered in 1998? And they were actually it was quite commonplace to use bears in the Polish army. And another interesting fact is that most deaths happened in pilot school. It's just like I've literally met someone that was that big of an asshole. There was a bunch of us at a party standing around a fire talking about cool stuff, and then some idiot who couldn't read the room came up and was like, I actually listened to this podcast. It's three Marines that get together and they like to chew the fat and they talk about this country and the direction that it's heading in. And I go, I know what direction this conversation is
Yeah.
heading. And he's just like talking about his Marine podcast. Then it ends with like him joking about like, yeah, and the Marines like to joke about Marine suicide. And I'm like, oh, good. That
Fantastic.
definitely
Yeah.
didn't bring the mood down here. Thanks a lot, man.
Yeah. I
Feel
can
like
bring the type of vibe to a party that nobody likes and I make everybody sad.
ba-boom.
Yeah.
There you go. We all know one. And that is, I think, encapsulates why this album is so fucking fun and perfect because you can relate to the super weird stuff and you can relate to the very basic stuff.
Mm-hmm. Brother, I think we're going to have a really tough time at our end of the year awards this year.
I think so.
Like with albums like this. Now, I don't know if I'm calling this album of the year or anything like that, but it's just like it's hard for me to look back at our list of albums we've done this year and find like really many weak ones at all. It seems like we've just been either picking the right ones or we've just got a massive amount of good music that we have access to.
Yeah, I think the only like real clunker that comes to mind is Ringo. That
Ugh.
epic misfire.
Yeah.
I wish I was a little cowboy and I ride on my own cow. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. So this is going to be another one. And I wonder, I think I'm going to go back and try to count up like how many buy-its we've had this year, because I think it's a substantial amount, a substantial percentage of the albums we've done, because this is going to be another one for me that I'm going to say buy it.
Yeah, this is a very clear buy it. This is like continued quality on the part of Viagra Boys. Been into their stuff for a while since like 2020. I think I found them during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And just fantastic. It's more of the in that vein of Squid, Black Midi, Idols, Fontaine's DC,
Mm-hmm.
Shame. It even, as weird as it sounds, shares a little DNA with Black Country New Road. I know you weren't
Mm-hmm.
crazy about that album, but that same kind of, I guess, the Sprechgesang is the genre, and I think there's an inventiveness and a freshness in that, and it is really kind of like starting to take over rock and punk rock and kind of meld with like folk
Mhm.
rock in a very interesting way. So I'll be curious to see what continues to come out of that genre, what continues to come out of that scene. And in the meantime, get yourself a copy of the Viagra Boys' new album, Viagra Boys, because it's a buy it, folks.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely fantastic album. Also going to recommend folks go listen to the couple new Turnstile singles that have come out. So Never Enough, and then another one's called Birds, and then I honestly forget what the third one's called. But this Turnstile album, I have a feeling is going to be something special.
Yeah, and that's it's coming in hot, right? It's coming out soon.
June 6th, so a little over a month.
Woo,
Yeah,
baby.
we're getting close.
That's some
But Alex,
treats.
where are they going to be able to find? Because I think I've talked about Turnstile a couple times on this podcast. You know where people could find that?
You've talked about Turnstile a number of times. As people will recall, not only that, but I used to be wildly consistent about bringing up Frank Zappa every episode, thinking that's the bit. That's the bit. That's what everyone comes for. They're waiting on it. They're like, oh, when's he going to say Zappa? And I grossly overestimated how much people cared. And I grossly overestimated my ability to keep up with that classic bit and track it and ensure that it was done every single time. It is deader than the parents on the Party of Five. And that is another Bloodhound Gang reference. Do you see what's happening here? Do you see like when we enter a flow state on this podcast, when we just start like free associating, when thoughts just like enter this fleshy conduit that we have, we're not really in charge of what's coming out of our mouths. We're just kind of here to give it a shape, to give it a form, and put it on the internet for you to watch at youtube.com/C/out on that line. Folks, we are not in charge here. The muse is. We would like to take credit for being geniuses, and we will. But that is just ego. That is human failing, because the truth is we are God's paintbrush. Hell, we are God. And that pretty much makes us better than you. And you can find all of our videos. We've got the reactions, we've got the podcast, we've got the fun on the record stuff that we do with Tanner, all kinds of great content. All you have to do is make sure that you're subscribed to the channel. You've turned your notifications on. You click the like button on every video. And of course, leave a comment. Leave a couple comments. Get into a comment war. I'm waiting on it. I'm waiting
Hmm.
on a real good argument. I feel like the Joker. I snap a pool cue over my knee and throw it down and go, make it fast. And I'm waiting. I'm waiting. That's all I can say. So
Hmm.
from God's lips to my lips to your old butt cheeks and ear holes and everywhere on your luscious body in between, I just want you to get down with us at youtube.com/C/out on that line.
And that's it. That's all, folks. Till next time.